I thought Raghu is not recording this session, so I could have said anything I wanted to say it. But before we start this session, I want to share three things with you. I want you to remember those forever, no matter what. I want you to keep those in mind. I don't talk too much about those three things in my presentation, but those three things will help you to take your evaluations to the next level. Those three things are, number first, active listening. Evaluation needs active listening. It's a skill which we need to practice. The second thing, critical thinking, because you're getting so much of data, so many things in that 5 to 7 or 4 to 6 minute speech. You want to pick up what things you are going to talk about. So active listening, critical thinking. And the third thing, heart. If you can bring your heart when you're evaluating, you can make a difference in person's life. So remember these three things: active listening, critical thinking, and your heart. It takes practice, but if you can bring in your heart, you can take your evaluations to the next level. As Raghu was mentioning, I want to share a story with you. I was in a Christmas party with my colleague. My boss had a big group of 10 to 12 people. As I was sitting there, one thing stuck to me at that moment. There was a manager under my boss. And I said to myself, if this guy becomes my boss, I would leave. I don't know why I said that to myself. 2 years went by and situations changed in the company. And he definitely became my boss. And it was time for him to give me feedback. He gave me such a direct feedback that it inspired me to look for a different position in my company. So remember, your feedback has the ability to make or break that person. So it's in your power how you choose it. Let's get it started. Here is the agenda. First, we're going to talk about why. Why do we need to worry about evaluations? Next, we'll talk about something different. A concept by Kim Scott, Radical Candor Compass. Then we'll talk about something, the magic of I statements. And then we'll talk about the structure and the systems we can use for our evaluation. Feedback. What is the ideal feedback? I did not know what the ideal feedback was. Then we'll talk about superlatives and rambling. What is superlative and why? Should we have it in our evaluations or not? Then we'll talk about how to practice our evaluation. I'll give a glimpse of some things, what to look for in evaluation, followed by questions. So let's get it started. My first question to you is why do we need to do an evaluation? And what are the benefits of doing an evaluation? Anyone? Raghu, Ram?
Yeah, it helps us to improve ourselves, like where we are going wrong or where we are going right. So if no one evaluates us, we always think that whatever we are doing is always right. But when we go into these evaluations, that's where we'll get to know where we are going wrong as well. So it helps us to improve, definitely. So that's why we wanted to go always do evaluation.
Very, very true, Raghuram. Stephen?
Yeah, I feel like when I give feedback, I learn from the person that giving a speech because of both the positive and the negative feedback. So it goes both ways. I find that it helped the person I'm giving feedback, but it also helped myself.
Very, very true. As Stephen pointed it out, we can actually learn from other speaker also. When they're giving a presentation, sometimes they're doing something which is very magnificent that we don't know, or we don't practice that in our speeches. But if we find something which is very useful, we can grab it and we can emulate it in our speeches. So it's a win-win situation for both of us. While giving an evaluation, I want you to think about three things whenever you are giving an evaluation. The first is the radical candor compass. The second thing is the magic of I statements. And the third thing, I want you to give an ideal feedback with a specific example. We'll come to this. I'll explain you and I'll recap this again at the end. My mentor, Dennis Dawson, introduced me to Radical Candor Compass. I had no idea what Radical Candor Compass is. Actually, it is based upon a book by Kim Scott. She wrote a book about radical candor, and the main gist of that book was how to give feedback at work. And she talks about this radical candor compass, where you have the y-axis. On one side, you care personally about the person. On the other side, you don't care about the person. On one side of the X, you challenge directly. And on the other side, you stay silent. So Kamish, which quadrant our evaluation should be? Here, 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 here.
It should be on the care personally,
Uh-huh.
because as you mentioned, we should consider our heart when we are evaluating someone. So we should
Yes.
think personally also before we evaluate someone, like what if we are in that situation, something
Very,
like that.
very true. Yes. But now you have two quadrants.
Mhm.
Which one you'd pick?
I would say like between silence and care personally, the left quadrant.
Yes. I'll share a
We
story with you. Let's get it started. So when I started giving an evaluation, okay, this quadrant I'm not going to talk about because I don't see much of it in Toastmasters or in real life, where we stay silent and we don't care about the person. Let's talk about ruinous empathy. My friend was giving a level 5 speech. He was not prepared. His speech did not meet the objectives. I cared about him, but I did not tell him exactly what went wrong in his speech. I stayed silent. Later on, I learned that this is the second worst quadrant to be in after this one. This is the worst. This is the second worst. Another quadrant, obnoxious aggression. As I was talking about my feedback at work, what I got was such a direct feedback that I was not able to handle it. So that is obnoxious aggression. Though this is the second best quadrant because you are getting some feedback. And finally, the most important one, the compassionate candor quadrant. In this quadrant, when you can give a courageous feedback in a compassionate way, challenging them directly, but also taking care of them, you can have the maximum amount of growth in this quadrant. Like if you look at this chart, you can see you see the maximum. It's a profound growth in this quadrant. No change, no change, defensiveness, and little change. So always try to see how you can get into this quadrant. It all depends upon how you use the words. And I'll talk about more into that, about how you use the words so that you can be in this quadrant. So when I'm evaluating a speech, I only talk about three things: the speech content, the speech delivery, and the impact of the speech. How did that speech make me feel? Remember, speech content, speech delivery, and impact. If I don't like that person, I keep that aside. I'm not evaluating the person. I'm just evaluating the speech content, delivery, and the impact of the speech. I was reading this book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and there was this one statement which I will never forget. That statement was, observation, not judgment, is the highest form of human intelligence. Observation, not judgment, is the highest form of human intelligence. So when we are giving an evaluation, we want to use the language which shows that we are observing. And that language is the I statements. I saw, I felt, I heard. So three things: I saw, I felt, I heard. Initially, when I started doing the evaluation, I was using you. But then I realized I just need to speak about me and use the I statements. Another thing I had to be careful about when I was giving an evaluation, just talk about me, not as the audience as the whole, because my experience is going to be different from Stephen's experience or Aman's experience. So I just talk about my experience, not other people's experience. So these are various I statements which you can use. So I talked about this: I heard, I felt, I noticed. Simple observations. But something you really, something if it had a very positive impact on you, like you really loved it or you enjoyed it. So you can use that kind of language. I liked, I loved, I enjoyed. Points out the, or reinforces the positives. If you're confused by something, or if you dislike something, you can say that using this language. I was confused by, I disliked, or I didn't understand. And finally, if you want the speaker to add something to their speech, you could say, I would love to see something, or love to see the call to action in that speech. And using that kind of language is very important. I wanted to know more about what happened in that story. I would like to hear the end, or I would like to hear a strong call to action. So you can frame it any way you want it, but make sure you talk about how that speech will become more effective in this. So using these different kinds of I statements in your evaluation will be very helpful. Any questions so far? Anyone?
Any suggestion for the structure, Abhijeet?
Yes, yes, I'll come to it. Okay.
Okay.
The next two slides, it's coming.
Abhijeet, what do you think about Abhijeet, what do you think about a we instead of an I? We think, we heard.
No, when you're giving the evaluation, it should be I, because see, your hearing and other person's hearing is going to be different. You cannot speak for the audience. So that's one thing which I always tell people is not to speak for the audience, just use I felt, I heard, I saw. Yeah.
Thank you.
Rajiv asked a question. Would I dislike be a negative statement?
I dislike, no, it's like you can say, like, I dislike too much uses of prop. Like I saw this speech and the guy was giving a fantastic speech, but he was using so many props that, yeah. It's what you felt you're sharing. It's your opinion. And I'll come back to that because when you say something like that, you need to have the why attached to it. Like if I'm saying to the person, he was giving a tall tales speech in the contest in 2020. His speech was very entertaining. But every 15 seconds, he was using a prop. I disliked the uses of prop because it was taking my attention away from your speech. See how I framed it. Any other questions? Let's move on. So what is the system we use? Remember one thing, when someone is giving a speech, we have to keep on taking the notes. And how we take the notes is very important. Initially, when I was taking the notes, I was taking so many notes that I was not listening to the speaker. I later on realized from my friend Renee that I need to take tweetable size notes, 140 characters, not more than that, because I still need to pay attention to what the speaker is saying. What I do is I just take my paper and divide it into two sides. One side, I write a positive, another side, I put a dash. Whatever something, when I see the speech, whatever something stands out in a positive way, I write in the positive side. If something I feel can be improved, I write it in the dash side. If something I'm confused by, I use a question mark. And something really inspires me, I use the star sign. So this is the system which I use while taking the notes. Notes taking is very, very important. The speak plus sign, what the speaker did effectively, dash sign, what the speaker could do to make their speech more effective. See the language I'm using, effective, more effective. I never say improved. I say your speech can be more effective. Something I was confused by, something that was inspiring, or something important. So this is the system which I use. Now comes the next part, the structure. When I'm giving an evaluation, it always has three parts. Introduction. I always talk about what the speech reminded me of in 20 seconds, 1 or 2 sentences. For example, my friend Devin was giving a speech. In his speech, they had to make a decision. Do they camp or do they go back to the cars? They decided not to camp because the temperature was very low, like -5 degrees Celsius. They decided to go back to the car. When I started my evaluation, I said to him, Devin, if I were in your position and I had to make a decision, I would have done the same, because when it comes to cold, I'm a wimp. So in that 20 seconds, I made a connection with him. What did that speech remind me of? That's the introduction. Yesterday, we had one evaluator giving the introduction of the speech, but she took 58 seconds to give that introduction. Remember, the evaluation is not about you, it is about the speaker. So I want you to go to the speaker as soon as possible, but take that 20 seconds to share what did that speech remind you of, followed by the body and the summary. Now let's go to the structure, precise structure of an evaluation. As I said, introduction. I'll just talk about how did the speech affect me. And then in the body, I talk about the 2 things the speaker did effectively. The 2 things the speaker did effectively. The 2 things speaker could do to make their speech more effective. The best thing about the speech, followed by the summary. When I'm summarizing, I talk about this first, then this, and then this. Any questions regarding the structure, Steve?
So 2 things, right? Each. Okay, maximum. Or you can see 3 things.
You can say it depends upon, but always watch the time also.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Mohan
one thing
has
I
a
want to talk.
question.
Yes.
Abhijeet,
Yes.
Mohan has a question.
Mohan, go ahead.
Yeah, Abhijit, when it comes to summary, right, I would usually prefer to detail out the body. And again, what we are going to tell it in the summary, right? I mean, either we need to tell overall how I felt, or is it like if I'm going to repeat what I have already said, why should we need a summary then?
The summary is always important because sometimes the repetition helps for the speaker to remember. And when I'm summarizing, I'm using at least 3-4 words only, not too much, not complete summary. Very brief, very, very brief. My summary is only 15 to 20 seconds. Okay. Like, for example, I could have said, if you would have pauses, that would make your speech more effective. The second thing is adding a call to action will make your speech more effective. And these are the things, a couple of things you can say. The 2 things that were effective, and the best thing about the speech was your message. That's it, and end it.
Okay.
Really summarizing. Susan?
Yeah, and not to disagree with you, but I will just point out that in Toastmasters, we try to use something in the way of a sandwich, where you start with something positive and end with something positive. And the key is if you start with negative, it has been my experience, the party who's hearing tends not to pay attention unless you're starting with something to warm them and have rapport with something positive. It's just how I've been trained. So what is your take on that, to start with the negativity or those things that could be improved upon to start?
I don't like to do that. I always like to start on a positive because I want to create that connection with the speaker. I need to share with them, because if I start with the negative, they will just cut me off. They would not listen to me. Any other questions?
Yes, and that's what you meant by saying this reminds me of something. Is that the positive introduction that you're talking about when you're giving? No.
Yes, introduction. This is just what did that speech remind me of? What, or how did it impact me? I just talk about 20 seconds. What was the impact on my heart, or what did it remind me of? Okay, this is just what that speech reminds me of. Nothing, not related to any. My evaluation starts with this one. Here is the things where I start my evaluation. Okay. As I said before, we're using a sandwich method. It's important to end on a positive note. So when I'm recapping, I recap by saying this thing first, and then this, and then the best thing. Because this makes sure that I am ending on a positive note. My goal is to motivate the speaker. My goal is to make sure they go back and they are encouraged to work on that speech. Yes, Pamela.
So I'm hearing that you are saying that it's positive to start off with saying 2 things that you could do to be more effective. So that's positive, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. I thought that was a little bit more critical when I hear that. So
No,
I have
no,
to think
no.
about that.
Yes. 2 things the speaker did effectively means the 2 things that really stood out for me. 2 things the speaker could do to make their speech more effective.
Gotcha, I got it reversed. Okay, you start out with the 2 things that
Yes.
the speaker did effectively. I misunderstood. Thank you. That makes sense.
Sure. So remember, the goal is to motivate the speaker.
Rajiv asked
So
a
far,
question whether we should balance the positive and suggestions 2-2, 3-3, or 3-2, 4-2 also is fine.
one thing, this is one point I'm going to mention, and I'm going to go away from what I said before. It depends upon where the speaker is at. Like suppose if that speaker is giving an icebreaker, I might give just 1 or 2 ways to make their speech more effective. I don't give too many things. But if it's an advanced speaker and I have a really strong relationship with them, then I can focus on, because I want to help them to take their speech to the next level. And then the language I use, my language is such that it's very empathetic and challenging at the same time. So 2-2 is a good starting point initially until you have done 50, 60 of evaluations, and then you can gauge the speaker, and depending upon that, you can go where their level is at. Okay. So now let's talk about what ideal feedback is, because I didn't know what a feedback is. I was giving an evaluation, I would say, oh, vocal variety was great. But then I realized that's just an opinion. We'll talk about that. Okay. So as I said before, when I just say, oh, the vocal variety is great, it's my opinion, and it doesn't help the speaker at all. To help the speaker, what do I have to do? Is I have to say that specific example or attach a why it was important. Because when I attach a why, they get an understanding, okay, why it was helpful. Your vocal variety was really good in this place because it conveyed your emotions. Because it conveyed your emotions is the why. So always remember to have a why attached to it. And remember, you need a why. You also need that specific example, what they said. Specific example is very important. Why plus specific example makes it an ideal feedback. Any questions? My friend Solazar was giving a talk. He was talking about evaluations. And in that, he said, superlatives don't give any information to the speaker. That stayed with my mind. And then when my friend Renee was evaluating, I was counting the number of times she was using amazing, 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 amazing. 8 times. She had amazing 8 times in her speech. And then when I went back, what Solazar said is when you say just amazing, very good, and don't attach a why to it, it doesn't has any meaning to it. Instead of praising, always share what it made you feel. That will be more effective. So try to avoid the superlatives as much as you can. I try not to use superlatives when I'm giving an evaluation. I always share what I felt like, and that adds more impact to it. Rambling. Remember, an evaluation is only 2 to 3 minutes with a 30-second grace period. My friend Dhruva was giving me an evaluation. He was in a competition. He was giving really good points. Boom, 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 boom. But in one point, he took a long time to explain it. And because of that, he didn't had enough time to summarize his evaluation. And in an evaluation competition, there are 15 points for summarizing your evaluation. So try to avoid rambling. Be specific to the points. We all heard the speech. When we give an evaluation, we don't need to recite the speech. And I see many times people do the same thing again and again and again and again. So try avoiding to recite that speech or regurgitate that speech, because we have all heard it. It saves a lot of time. Any questions regarding regurgitation? The best thing is whenever someone is giving a speech, have your paper ready, divide into 2 places, and write the points the speaker did effectively, and then note down the points the speaker could do to make their speech more effective. Because when you start listening and listening and listening, that's the way you get better at giving evaluations. My mentor inspired me to sign up for evaluations in every meeting. So in my first year, I just was evaluating and evaluating and evaluating and evaluating. And that helped me to understand how to give an evaluation. So far, we went through all these things. Now I'm going to talk about what to evaluate. This is just a sample. I'm not giving a complete list of things. I'm just talking about 12 points. Vocal variety. Why is vocal variety important? Vocal variety conveys the emotions. So that's why if someone adds the vocal variety in their voice, that makes a huge difference. So look for, are you able to hear some emotions from the person? If it is because of the vocal variety they're using. Hearing is important. Body language. Body language is nearly 58% of the communication. Like my friend was giving an icebreaker. He had a very enthusiastic tone, but his hands were moving like this as he was speaking. It shows a little bit of nervousness. So what we encourage is to have an open body language. So watch for what is the speaker doing with their body. Role play. Why I like a role play in the speech is because you can use different voices. If you use the same voice for 2 different characters, it's very confusing for the audience. So when I'm evaluating, and if I see that the speaker is using role play, I will tell them, or I would encourage them if they are not using it. Audience awareness. When I started speaking, I didn't have the audience awareness. Was my audience sleeping, or how can I engage them in my speech? So there are various techniques to engage the audience. So that is very important. The audience awareness will help you to have a good engagement, and you can evaluate the speaker based upon his or her audience awareness. Props. The props can be very powerful. When I saw his speech, I see something in you. The way he used the rose. It was a very powerful moment. So having the right prop at the right moment can add value to your speeches. Clarity. Was the speech clear? Were you able to follow them? Let the speaker know about it. If it was not clear, point it where it was not clear. Pauses. Pauses are very effective. They give the time for the audience to take in, especially if someone is starting out speaking. They speak at such a fast pace. They don't pause. And if we don't pause, the audience cannot take everything what you're saying. So having the right pauses at the right moment makes a huge difference. I love this technique, book ending, first line and the last line. If you can connect your first line to the last line, it creates an impact. It completes the story. So if a speaker has book ending in their speech, I will point it out. Preparation. If someone is very new and giving their speech, I will tell them, oh, if you prepare your speech a little bit more, it'll be easier for you to get rid of those unwanted pauses. So preparation, if they're very well prepared, you can point it out. Content. Content is like around 55% of your speech, especially in the contest. So content is very important. How is the content laid out? How are the transitions in the content? You can talk about those. Comfort level. When a new speaker is speaking, their comfort level is a little bit lower. So you can help them how they can improve their comfort level. Call to action. Remember, a speech is not about you, it's about the audience. So why you are telling the story, there is always that message to you. And having the right call to action can inspire your audience or increase your audience engagement. So have the call to action in your speeches. So this is just a small sample of all the 12 things. There are many more things you can go through, but this is just a sample. So finally, if I'm recapping, always remember the radical candor, giving the feedback while caring for the person as well as challenging them. We have to be courageous. We have to apply candor, and we have to be compassionate. Use the I statements. I felt, I saw, I heard. And finally, always have an ideal feedback with a why and a specific example attached to it. Questions? Yes, Kamesh.
Yeah, Abhijeet. I have a question. Like when I deliver a feedback about a speaker, if there's any disagreement on my feedback, how should I handle this? Like, should I be silent and ignore that, or I should try to deep dive into that and always try to justify that my feedback is correct?
So what you say is just my opinion. Your opinion is going to be different about it. And always use I statements. So that will help them to take it that it is your feedback. Okay. Yeah. It's your opinion.
Abhijeet, I have a question.
Yep.
During the legacy program, we were trained to speak to our evaluators prior to the speech.
Yes.
So that kind of builds not just a rapport, but you have the evaluator is kind of prepared. Could you speak a little bit about it? Because I don't see this happening anymore.
Yes. One thing I want to tell everyone is the speaker and the evaluators need to talk. The evaluator needs to, actually the speaker needs to send the evaluation form at least 2 or 3 days prior so that they can prepare for the evaluation. And as an evaluator, I always ask the speaker, do you want me to look for anything else? Because then that gives me more information, what they would like in the evaluation. And sometimes when I'm evaluating, I have so many points. I don't say all the points at that moment while giving an evaluation, but I share them at a later time. Okay, here are some of the things that will make your speech more effective. So talking to your evaluator and speaker is a must. Having that connection will help you to take your evaluations to the next level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions? Yes, Pamela?
2 quick observations when I listened to a speech, or 2 points that you brought up just now. And one was about learning techniques to engage the audience and really understand what techniques, how we can use techniques. And the other one is the comfort level of the speaker. And I would like to hear more about those 2 points to help people deliver a more effective speech.
Yes.
I know we don't have time now probably, but thank you.
But I can quickly tell you. See, audience awareness is like one thing I've seen, especially the speakers who have a lot of experience. They're watching the expressions of the people, and depending upon, they change their speeches or insert something in their speeches that gets the audience engaged, like asking a question. So that is something which you can tell, okay, he or she is aware of the audience. And comfort level depends upon how comfortable the speaker is. Initially, you can see the comfort level changes. Sometimes I will tell a speaker, like for example, last week, one of my friend, Tejas, was giving a speech. And one thing I immediately told him, hey, your comfort level was so much better this time than your prior speeches. That was something which I noticed.
Govind said, hello.
Hello, yes,
Okay.
Govind.
Actually, giving the speech is very easy as compared to evaluating speech, right? So for giving the speech, we can practice, but for evaluation, it is not, we cannot do, right? So how to practice? Because I'm very poor in evaluation, but I can say I'm good in giving a speech. Thank you.
Definitely. So if you really want to practice, this is what I did with me and Renee. Renee was competing in the contest. She was in the district finals, and we had 2 weeks to prepare. What we did was in 2020, they put in 28 semifinal speeches in YouTube. We both will listen to the speech, and then Renee would have 5 minutes to give me an evaluation. After that, I'll give her feedback. Again, we'll go to the next speech. She'll have 5 minutes, and then I'll give her feedback. So this practicing, that really helped her to take her evaluations to a completely different level. And evaluations can be improved by practice. You just sign up for evaluations and make sure you have a good general evaluator in the meeting, because general evaluator is going to give you feedback on your evaluations. If that general evaluator is not doing their job, X them out. Have a good general evaluator, because it's important to get feedback on your evaluations. Yeah. Like yesterday, Sarika was very good at evaluation. She was giving good feedback. So that was very helpful.
Any other question for Abhijeet?
One last thing I want to say, with evaluations, you can make very strong friends. I have few people I've met I didn't know, but just giving them that evaluation made us really good friends. And Raghu is the most prime example. I didn't know Raghu. He gave a speech and I asked him, hey, do you want me to give you a fluffy evaluation or do you want me to give you a directly challenging evaluation? So that's how our friendship started. So remember, you can make an impact in people's lives by your evaluation. Use that power wisely.
I still remember that day, Abhijeet. Thank you. Ramakrishna has a question. I'll close with
Yes,
that.
Ramakrishna. Yeah.
Okay. Considering the situation where we are not good at English, not good at grammar, not good at all the phrases that we use, but still we are asked to evaluate.
Okay.
I think,
So Ramakrishna.
that is, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that is a place where actually we are not the correct persons to evaluate, but given the task, how do we do that?
That's a very good question, Ramakrishna. When I started evaluation, my grammar was not good. My English, I was scared about it. But what I did is as soon as the speech is done, I would just close myself and I will write down the complete evaluation. And I practiced that for nearly like 30, 35 times, like writing down the complete evaluation. And then I would just read it. That was my practice. And after doing that, then I became more comfortable, or I could do the sentences as I was speaking. Then I just needed the points. I did not need the whole sentences. So initially, just practice writing down the complete evaluation before you are giving them that evaluation. Does that help, Ramakrishna?
Yeah, but actually it will be very immediate at times where we have to give the feedback immediately after the speech.
So
in that
that
case, it might
time,
not be possible.
Yeah, just write down bullet points. Okay, these things were effective. Why? You do your best. You know, like for example, I'm in a club where I have to give an evaluation in 2 minutes, and that's the hardest. So people also know like giving an evaluation in 2 minutes, it can be really hard. You do your best. But keep on practicing, practicing, practicing. Don't back out from giving an evaluation.
And also, we do expect, like in a 2-minute speech, we do expect a complete format. And we know that it is not possible to follow the complete format of for the complete speech in order for the audience to understand. How do we address that, both as a speaker and as an evaluator?
Sure. So in that time, when you have taken the notes, you immediately know what things the speaker did effectively and what things the speaker could do to make the speech effective. So even having just two points, or even, you know, I was at a contest and there the speaker was just giving 1 point, one thing the speaker did effectively, one thing the speaker could do to make the speech more effective, and the best thing about the speech. So he didn't had many points, but he went depth into it. So add your reason why, give an example, and that's fine. Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
Stephen, you have a question?
Oh, no, I just want to echo what you said. Actually, evaluation can make friends. I got my mentor, like she evaluated me and she became my mentor. So I was very encouraged because at that time I just joined Toastmasters. So I just want to echo your points. Yeah, exactly like you said. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, DTM Abhijeet, and everyone who was asked him questions, because asking question is the first step to learn. Certainly, it's hard to evaluate, as someone pointed out, but one thing I will tell you, practice will make you perfect in the path. It's not just in Toastmasters, it's not just evaluating speeches. Evaluation and feedback will help you in your work life too. For that, please to join the meeting of Toastmaster for Professionals, where DTM Susan is going to talk about how to apply these techniques in our work life and personal life. With that note, I will end this session here and we can all go to our breakout rooms.